In this video, I'm going to be sharing my personal experience of the Holacracy Practitioner training. Hi, I'm Lizzie Benton, company culture coach and founder of Liberty Mind. If you love learning more about company culture, or if you're on a company culture journey and want to learn about the different and interesting things that are happening, then don't forget to subscribe, because this is what this channel is all about: building purpose-driven company cultures. So in today's video, I'm going to be sharing my personal experience of the Holacracy Practitioner training. For those of you who are new to Holacracy and what it all means, Holacracy is an operating system for self-managed organizations. If you've been dipping your toe into self-managed organizations, essentially a self-managed organization is free from hierarchy, and instead people have the agility and the autonomy to meet the expectations of their work in pretty much any way possible, with obviously a few things in mind. But one of the leading characteristics of self-managed organizations is it removes hierarchy in the organization. So it's becoming extremely popular. Self-management is a big phenomenon that's growing in Europe, and especially in the Netherlands and Scandinavian countries, and it's slowly creeping across here in the UK, but the adoption rate is very slow. But in today's video, I'm going to be sharing my personal experience of the Holacracy Practitioner training and my personal opinion about whether it works and whether it doesn't work. To give you a little bit of context and background about my experience and my passion for self-managed organizations, I was introduced to self-managed organizations probably about 4 to 5 years ago when I discovered Reinventing Organizations by Frederic Laloux, a book that I highly recommend. After being totally inspired by Frederic's book, I then started to look into other organizations who were adopting self-management, and also reading lots of other literature and interviewing and asking lots of questions to companies who had adopted this radical practice. The big thing about self-management is that it's so new and so progressive that there's not exactly a degree or a course you can take in self-management. Essentially, it is all about trial and error, and the only formal practice or process for self-management is currently Holacracy, which obviously is why I decided to take the training, because I thought, okay, I've read lots of books, I've interviewed lots of people, I've started to test and trial it with some of my clients, and now I'm thinking, how do I get a little bit more confident, and how do I get a little bit more to grips with the practices of self-management, and exactly at its core, what are some of the key issues that come out? So I booked onto the Amsterdam training in January 2020, yes, when COVID wasn't even a thing yet. Some of you may be familiar with Holacracy already, because Brian Robertson, who actually kind of invented the operating system for this self-management practice, has written a book all about it, which I highly recommend. So add that one to your reading list before you probably go on to the training, because it might just give you a taste of it before you decide to fully commit, because A, it's an entire week out of your business, and B, the training is pretty pricey. So like I said, the reason I wanted to go and investigate Holacracy was because it was really the only formal operating system that's out there. Lots of other businesses practice self-management and have adopted self-management without Holacracy. I just want to put that disclaimer there. In order to be self-managed, you do not have to adopt Holacracy. Holacracy is just one way to do it. As the old saying goes, there's many ways to skin a cat, and basically Holacracy is one of them. The key attributes to Holacracy is that it gives you everything you need to get going in regards to self-management. It's a bit like taking a full package. You don't have to stress about different processes or practices, because Holacracy literally gives you everything. At the foundation of holacracy is the constitution, and essentially when you adopt holacracy, all of your team decide to sign the constitution, because that's all of you essentially making a promise that you're going to live by this self-management structure, and it essentially is like your accountability document. It kind of replaces your traditional HR policies slightly. Something you'll hear really often about holacracy is the power of their meetings. So meetings in a traditional organisation are chaos. Often they're really long, they are really poorly structured, nobody really knows why they're there. There's a lot of egos in the room, so the loudest person is always the one who gets to speak and has all the answers, and the quietest person never gets to contribute. So they're these really unproductive, ineffective meetings. Holacracy have completely changed that with their operating model, and essentially you have to abide by two different types of meetings. A governance meeting is a meeting that takes place specifically around operational or organisational issues. So this is where things like people's roles may change, or responsibilities or accountabilities. Governance is essentially how the business is operating. The other type of meeting you have is a tactical meeting, and a tactical meeting is more about the day-to-day runnings of people's projects and tasks and actions. So this is something that happens weekly, where teams will come together and purely only discuss projects, tasks and actions. I suppose the one thing I really want to explain to people who are maybe considering Holacracy Practitioner training is just how intense the training week is. Imagine everything you've learned over the past decade or your entire career about how a company should run and how people should be productive. That is completely blown out of the water. And I can hold my hands up and say that at the end of those 5 days of training, I sat in the airport and I had the biggest headache, because every day I was mentally exhausted from how disruptive and changing it was to my mindset and how I viewed traditional business. It was transformational, to say the least. I do think that even if you're not seriously considering taking on holacracy as an operating system, I think the training is incredibly valuable for how it enables you to see self-management and also some of the practicalities and the issues that can really come up when you're looking to adopt self-management practices. Throughout the week of training, you are put into these kind of fake simulation businesses where you have to essentially learn how to self-manage in this kind of false simulated environment, which is so hard because when you're used to operating in a traditional business sense, all of a sudden you're let loose into this really unusual and unfamiliar setting, and you can no longer rely on your old knowledge. It's all about relying on your existing knowledge and trusting yourself to make the right decisions under self-management. Now, of course, there are pros and cons with everything. Holacracy isn't perfect, and Brian Robertson will say this himself. The Constitution is constantly being updated and adapted to be modified for people that are, finding loopholes or discovering different things. So it's not perfect, but it's so much better than how many businesses currently run. In my personal opinion, holacracy is a great stepping stone into self-management because it creates a really nice, safe environment for everybody to feel like they kind of know what's expected of them and what's needed of them. However, it does obviously have its flaws. Many people say it can be incredibly rigid, even though there's no hierarchy. There are lots of systems and processes, and some people just don't like the meetings. However, some people love the meetings and think that they're really effective. You can always take on the tactical and governance meetings and their format without being holacratic, which many companies do. Sometimes they just take parts of it and adopt little bits of it into their own self-management practice. The elephant in the room when it comes to any self-management practice, and this isn't just exclusive to Holacracy, is simply people's ability to change. So with self-management, leaders have to really step back slightly in kind of dictating and commanding, and that can be really hard, especially if you've been used to micromanaging people. You can no longer do that. It's also really hard for people to step up and take accountability and take responsibility for their roles. We all say we want to be able to just do our own work, but when the reality is that, how many of us are willing to step up? In our current workplace system, especially here in the UK, we have so many flaws. We love putting the blame on other people if something wasn't directly our responsibility, and we are just conditioned to essentially take orders. So when we actually have to step up and start taking responsibility and having accountability, some people just don't like that. And that's where holacracy can really fall down. However, there are many reasons why holacracy may not work for your business. Zappos is a fantastic case study about holacracy just not working. In 2013, the former CEO of Zappos, Tony Hsieh, decided to completely adopt holacracy. He was mad on it, and in fact, he gained so much press and media coverage about this adoption because he sent this email around saying to everyone, hey, we're adopting holacracy, and if you don't like it, here's some money and you can leave. That's literally what happened, which kind of doesn't set self-management off on the right foot because he's already kind of dictating to everybody what they should do. Anyway, if you are looking for a case study, then I highly recommend Zappos, but there are also some really incredibly successful case studies around holacracy as well. I've actually interviewed Roth from TraidCraft, who has successfully adopted holacracy and been practicing holacracy for the past 3 years. You can listen to that interview on my podcast, the Company Culture Podcast, Goodbye Hierarchy, Hello Holacracy, and I will leave a link to that in the description below. So definitely give that a listen because it might really stimulate some ideas or a conversation. So the big question is, would I recommend you do the Holacracy Practitioner training? Yes, if you would like to start creating a more self-managed organization, I would highly recommend it. However, I would err on the side of caution that it doesn't work for everyone and it may feel very alien and very rigid. So actually go and do it, but then look at lots of other different self-managed organizations and how they're using a kind of pick and mix approach. Because there may be some parts of holacracy that don't fit your business or your people, so there might be other routes that you can go down. As a self-management coach, I am more than aware of how difficult the transition can be into a self-managed organization or business. So it really is about finding something that works and being really passionate and ready to test and trial and get excited about doing things differently. It's not always going to work first time, which is something we hate to hear, but it's just the truth. There will be things that don't work that we have to try again, but each time you will consistently learn, and that is the progress of self-management. It's just doing things better every time. Like I said at the start of the video, if you're really passionate about doing things differently in your company culture, then don't forget to subscribe because I am now doing weekly videos on all things company culture. But thank you so much for watching, and I would love to hear your comments below. See you next week.